Hello, professionals. My name is Rico Aladdin, and I'm the founder of Professional Lunch. Today, my guest is the Superintendent of Fargo Public School. Welcome to the show, sir.
Well, thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Please tell the Professional Lunch audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Rupak Gandhi, first and foremost. I am proud to be the husband of my wife, Brittany Gandhi, and the father of my 5-year-old son, Jagger, who just started kindergarten this year, and a 3-year-old daughter, Emerson, and a dog at home named Tex. But my professional role, I am now I'm in the middle of my 6th year in Fargo Public School. So I never thought I would join education. I joined education through a program called Teach for America. I was a political science pre-law major coming out of college and decided to join a program that focuses on making sure that they're trying to provide educators in underserved communities. So I taught in Houston for 2 years. It was originally a 2-year commitment, and just decided to stay with education. And since then, I taught at the elementary level. I taught special education, then became a high school assistant principal, was an elementary assistant principal, an elementary principal, then became a high school principal, all in Houston. So I was there for over a decade. And then I spent 2 years in Colorado Springs as an assistant superintendent before being offered the opportunity to lead Fargo Public Schools in 2018.
Wonderful. You mentioned Houston, Texas, and Colorado Springs. Are those states colder or warmer than Fargo?
Well, I think we know Fargo is significantly colder, but it was a nice little path. Houston is very different climate change. Colorado Springs does get snow, but Colorado Springs is also one of the sunniest cities in America, so the snow normally melts by the afternoon. So a little bit of a culture shock coming to Fargo, but the temperature may be cold, but we say about our community, the people are incredibly warm here, and my family and I are just so excited to be in Fargo.
Yes, you are right about that. The people are really warm here. So now you've been in this role for how long now? 6 years, yes?
Yeah, I'm currently in my 6th school
year. Wonderful. So what does the superintendent do? What are your responsibilities?
At the end of the day, we get to take credit for the great work of our staff and our students, and it's incredibly honorable and a privilege for mine to be able to be a superintendent. But my job really is to focus on the system. It's to work with our Board of Education to make sure that we're developing that vision for the school district, and then that we're really following through on the systems and the organization that we're putting in place to make sure that we can fulfill our mission. So I focus a lot on making sure that as an organization, are we making sure that we're distributing our resources right? Are we making sure that our focus is the right way? And are we really fulfilling the vision of the community and our school board?
Wonderful. So 6 years ago, when you first took over this position, what was your first action?
At that moment in time, our school district was working on ongoing teacher negotiations, and we've seen now in education, we have students that are coming in with more needs, as we all know within our community as well. Mental behavioral health becomes a significant challenge as well. So one of the first things that we really did at that moment in time, and it wasn't because of me, it was more of just what the district was working on through negotiations, but also just where the district's challenges were, was making sure that we fulfilled our existing strategic plan at that moment in time, but then also making sure that we had resources available to provide more trauma-informed practices in our schools and make sure that we're supporting our students by creating a safe environment, but also being able to address some critical needs that the district was facing.
Yeah, you mentioned some issues, some needs, but that's usually, I would talk about that when we talk about the challenges. But so what are some of the major issues that you are facing right now at the school?
Right now, as we know, the last couple of years have been really hard on public education. I think part of that has just been some mis or disinformation as well within the community or what's happening in our schools. So I think that currently we're facing this politicalization of K-12 schools, which is unfortunate. The Fargo-Moorhead area provides great K-12 schooling experiences across all sectors, and we provide great public schools, great private schools. All of our school districts are excelling really well, but there is this additional battle. Sometimes it seems like we have to fight with the narrative and the politicalization of education. So that's something that we're dealing with. At the end of the day, right now, we know that we have more students coming in that have experienced adverse childhood experiences. So that may result in some behaviors or some actions that really manifest themselves into deeper issues that may be mental behavioral health challenges that we need to address as well. But then also making sure that we provide a wide variety of opportunities. Schools are hundreds and hundreds of years old systems, and they need to change. The way school was when you were in school or when I was in school is different than what students are now. So one of our biggest challenges right now is how do we develop and modify the system to meet the needs of the 2023 learner or learners that might even be here in 2033, 2043, and so forth.
Hmm. So you mentioned students that have adversarial issues. What does that mean?
Yeah, so oftentimes when we talk about mental behavioral health,
Hmm.
everyone has different standards. I think one of the challenges currently in our community, and especially plaguing K-12 schools, is we don't normally have a standard to determine when do mental or behavioral health issues need treatment versus needing maybe an accommodation at a school system, right? So if I'm on the physical health piece, I know that the food I eat, the water I drink, that's in my control. But I am also very well aware that there's certain over-the-counter medications that I can take for general symptoms, but when it gets to needing treatment or needing a prescription, that I need to go see a doctor. I think that currently we don't have that for mental and behavioral health, so there's no clear standard of when you seek treatment. So in K-12 schools, one of our measures to determine when and where student needs might be, or one of the reasons that we're moving towards moving to utilizing more restorative practices and trauma-informed care, is that we use this measure called adverse childhood experience. And what the research will show you is that the higher your ACE score, which is more adverse childhood experiences that you've had, the more likely that you're going to exhibit behaviors that might be caused by the trauma of the adverse childhood experiences you have. So it's really a measure to say, how many different measures have you had that could result in behaviors that could then also be misbehaviors that are manifestations of that trauma itself.
Wow. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we talk about the challenges. But how does the board view its role as it relates to you as a superintendent?
Yeah, I think every school district might have a little bit of variance in that view.
Okay.
More important than what's the right or wrong view is important that the board and the superintendent or the board and the administration have a clear understanding of each other's roles. I'm very fortunate. Every school district I've ever worked for in my career has a strong governance model in place. And I define governance as a defined structure that clearly outlines what the role of the board is and then what the role of administration is. And personally, I didn't apply for any school district when I was seeking a superintendency that didn't have a strong governance model in place. And Fargo Public Schools has implemented policy governance, and that really has strengthened the role of the board. What it does is it makes it very clear that the board's role is to govern through philosophy, vision, finance, and policy. And then our role as an administrator and every other staff member in our organization is to execute the vision of the board and then be charged of all the operations. And we have very clear delineation and a clear steps and rules on how we work together to go through that process. And that's something I'm very, very grateful for.
Wonderful, wonderful. So do you believe that the school district has a responsibility for improving the instructional effectiveness of its teachers?
Absolutely. I think I think every school district needs to set their own measures of success, because we often talk about student achievement, and student achievement is always equated to just a standardized test score, which is critically important for both progress monitoring and learning and growth, but also comparative reasons. But I think one of the things that we often miss the mark when we're talking about narratives on school districts is the student experience side. And every school district, public school district, has a locally elected body that, they're really there to represent the student experience and provide input on what are some values or critical components that our school district needs. And you have to be able to understand that resources, time, and energy are always finite. And we have to be able to balance that student achievement and that student experience part. So at the end of the day, there isn't a public school district in America that's hitting 100% of the mark every single day. But I also don't use that as my measure of success. I think data and assessments and testing is there for a practitioner's growth. It's how do we use that to grow students, to get individuals where they need to be. But our measure of success is to be, we define our organization through becoming a learning organization, which means we want to get better every single day. So our measure of success is to make sure that we're making reasonable progress towards our strategic initiatives. And then we're taking a look at our data to say whether or not we're making progress to that, or then shifting our resources to help our students that may not be making that progress to be able to do that as well.
So if I could follow up on that, what do you think are the the top barriers to student success when you, when you look at your data?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the biggest barrier is the limitations that we have on time, energy, and resources. So we live in a world of competing priorities. And when you take a look and you ask anyone about their K-12 school experience, I oftentimes, whenever I'm speaking, I'll ask a room of individuals, raise your hand if you had a good experience in your K-12 school experience. And almost everyone will raise their hand. And if I say raise your hand if you had a poor experience, a lot of the same individuals will keep their hand experience as well. And I do that to share the fact that there isn't a single person that can guarantee that 100% of the time I'm able to replicate the positive school district experience that you had in your own K-12 career and eliminate all of the bad experiences, because so much of what we do is based on relationships, is based on adults, and education is dynamic and moving. So we have to be able to recognize that what is our standard of success and first norm on that. So oftentimes I think that one of the biggest barriers is that everyone has a different definition of success for K-12 schools. So we're being pulled in different directions, especially when you have only so much staff, so much energy, so much resources and time to be able to do that. So structurally, I think that's one of the biggest barriers currently, is that maybe what someone's expecting out of the K-12 schools might be different than another parent, and then you translate that to 3,000 staff and 11,000 students. We really have to make sure that what we all expect out of the K-12 school system is the same, and then we're all working towards those same goals.
Yeah, you mentioned something that is really important. Everybody measures success differently. So, when it comes to a student of a diverse group of students, how do you think? How do they measure success? What have you find?
Yeah, great question. For us, we strongly believe and promote the concept of educational justice, and we define educational justice as it is the just responsibility of the school system to make sure that every student has the opportunity to be successful. Yeah. And that doesn't mean that we believe in equality. That means we believe in equity, which means that equity means making sure you provide every student what they need to be successful, and that means that your resource allocation might be disproportionate or proportionate according to what those needs are. And so for us, ultimately, whether or not students are achieving educational justice is measured by looking at the parity and disparity in our student outcomes. When you look at what the end result is of what we're trying to provide, which is a high quality education, are we making sure that we're doing that for all student groups, whether it's racial groups, whether it's based on your family income status, whether it's based on gender, whether it's based on English language learner status or students with a disability. We take a look at that. And like I've said before, I know that our goal, we always strive for perfection, but we also know that that may not be attainable because an assessment is a measure in one point in time. But what we want to do is make sure that we're never marginalizing the same group over and over. So we really want to build a system where we're measuring what's the gaps in outcomes, and then how are we adjusting the systems to fix those gaps so it's not the same group of students that our system is denying educational justice for time and time again.
Wonderful. So how many schools do you have in your district?
We have 26 buildings, 23 schools. We have a couple of paired schools and some things.
Oh, okay. But so since you started, have you developed a school improvement plan?
Yeah, we actually refreshed our strategic plan about a year and a half ago. That we are now following for our system level work, and then our strategic plan will then lead to every one of is divided into different teams. Each team owns a strategic initiative, so we follow now what we call an organizational structure chart versus a traditional organizational hierarchy chart, where we're collaboratively all working towards some very specific measures that are defined in our strategic plan. But then based off of that, we will also create a district improvement plan and school improvement plan, and then every building will follow and do that as well.
Okay, so each plan will be designed for the specific school. Is that
absolutely correct? Yep.
Okay, wonderful. So we're gonna take a short break here. When we come back, we will talk to Dr. Gandhi about some of the things that he loves about his work. We'll be right back. We are back. We are at the Basin Information Network studio at NDSU today. My guest is Dr. Rupak Gandhi, the Superintendent of Fargo Public School. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Now we get to talk about some of the things that you love about what you do. Tell me, what do you love about what you do?
First and foremost is just interacting with students. Being able to serve our student population is the most rewarding part, and probably one of the main reasons that most people go into education. our students, I do believe, are our future. I do believe that education has the ability to strengthen our democracy and really impact our world for a significant change for the better down the road as well. And so being able to interact with our students, learn from them, is without a doubt the most rewarding part of the job.
Wonderful. So tell me, what is the most important school business function that the superintendent does?
I think most people would probably think that's calling a snow day. So
Snow day.
There's significant impact on that. But no,
Okay.
at the end of the day, I think the most important function of a school superintendent is to really make sure that your system is never leaving a student behind, and you're doing everything that you can, because I try to view every student as my own child, and I know that I'd want a school system that's continuously working to provide them with the educational justice that they deserve. So.
Yeah, so you mentioned never leave a student behind. So, and I know you're going to try to do that, but in some cases, there will be some that
Yeah.
you really can't pull because of, random circumstances or what have you. So how do you deal with situations like that when they occur?
At the end of the day, for me, it's important to say, what is that measure of success that we're taking a look at? And I want to make sure that more important than any one data point at one point in time is that we are providing students an opportunity to be successful and be productive members of our society. And if there's students that have challenges, that we're removing those challenges or those barriers for them. So maybe that means that some students need different resources or allocations or different types of support than other students. We know that. We know that no system's perfect. Our system hasn't helped every child behind, and I don't think it always will. But if I ever lower expectations, then I'm doing a disservice and creating a system of complacency. So for us, it's also not always measuring yourself in the outcome, but making sure that you've never diminished the expectations for a student or a group of students because of whatever challenges they have. Because at that point, if we lose faith, then who is going to believe them?
Okay. So what would you say? Because this part of the conversation, this is where we talk about the guests, your accomplishments, things that you have been experienced on your job. Because what we want to have is to give the college students, early career professionals who are watching this, give them a window into your career. So tell me, what has been your best, your best accomplishment in your professional career?
Yeah, I think I'll use that question. I'll answer it in two ways, both in terms of what I've been the best recipient of as a gift in my professional career, and then what I would also hopefully be my accomplishment down the road, which is mentorship. I think that the success that I've had in my career has been because of mentors that have invested in me and that I've learned from. Some mentors you learn what to emulate, and some mentors you learn what not to emulate.
Yeah.
But I think if you use everything as a learning experience, then I think you really will get ahead. So, I shared before that in education we're very data driven, but I don't believe that one data point at one point in time is reflective of everything. I think the key goal.
I like this.
I think the key goal
Yeah.
is to be reflective and to always want to do better. So I don't ever feel that my way or the highway is only one way to do things. I think that we owe it to ourselves to always be growing, always be learning, and be reflective. And I think if you can do that, then you'll be successful. And I'm a big sports guy. I grew up in Los Angeles. I think of like some of the athletes that I always respected growing up, and there's a phrase: if they studied the game, oftentimes they're better, right? They know the history, they know players that came before them. To me, it's the same piece. Study what's happening around you, contextualize that data, build a network, build a community of leaders, because leadership can be isolating, and make sure that you're not just doing things on your own, but you really have a brain trust that can help you through that, and you can learn from that. And I really think that that's going to be one of the most important skill sets for any professional across any industry.
I like the fact that you mentioned a mentorship, because you are right now at the mentorship community. So we are so glad we have you on the show today. So, but again, do you volunteer as mentors for young professionals who are launching their careers?
Yeah, I do so both within industry and outside as well.
Okay.
But currently I mentor a group of school superintendents across our state, but then I'm also part of a national group that mentors superintendents through our school superintendent's national certification program as well. So I'm really fortunate to have two group of mentees that I've been working with for the past couple of years. My dissertation focused on transitioning to the role of the superintendency and how to define yourself not just by a set of standards that define a skill set you may have, but also taking a look at what I believe is trait-based leadership. So what are some traits that can transcend any one circumstance, but really be translated to any situation that you have? And how do you develop mentors through creating the traits, whether they're surprised by a global pandemic or something else that happens that may be disruptive to their industry, they can still be successful and know how to deal with those situations.
Wonderful. You know, I am pretty big on mentorship because I've had so many mentors especially in the last 5 years, guiding me through, creating professional lunch and also in my own professional life. It's really amazing when you can just sit down for just half hour with someone and really just listen, actively listen, and then you soaking in, you've taken in,
Absolutely,
like I think months of their knowledge, in just that little brief segment of time. It's really amazing. So,
agreed.
One thing, what has been your best experience so far at the school since you took over?
There's so many positive experiences I've had. A little bit biased here, but seeing my son start kindergarten in our school system, that is an experience. I love our community. I love serving Fargo Public Schools. Although I'm very, very, very far from it. If I have the opportunity and the privilege to shake my son's hand and my daughter's hand at graduation and give them their diploma, I think that would be an experience that you can never think of before too. But anything related to students have been wonderful experiences. When I said I started my career as a elementary teacher, and then I became a high school principal. I became the high school principal that was the feeder school from the elementary school I taught. And just the way it worked out in my career was that I was the high school principal of some of my former students I taught. So I got to give them their diploma when they graduated as their principal, and I was their teacher in elementary school, and that was a very rewarding experience too. So those opportunities are tremendous. In Fargo Public Schools, it seems like almost on a daily basis, I'm so proud and grateful for my job. Like, I don't view it as a job because I go to work every single day because of the people that we have there, the community we get to serve, and our students. And so narrowing it down to just one or two accomplishments is hard, but I think the biggest accomplishment I would say is the fact that I run to work every day and I love what I do.
Wow, not too many people can say that in this in this world now. People can say that they don't feel like they are working at their job because there's the stress of it. And so, what is next for you? What excites you? What plan do you have that give you excitement when you think about it?
I think the future does. I think our future is changing, and being able to provide students more opportunities and look at what's different about education and how do we adapt accordingly, that's what excites me. I think, I referenced earlier that education's changed. I think at one point in time, information used to be primarily transferred through your teachers, schools where you go to learn information. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think all of us have access to information off our cell phones or devices or the internet. So I think the role of schools have shifted. I don't think that's primarily the source of information anymore. Now I think schools need to teach students how to critically think and analyze the information they already have access to, and how do you use that information. So I think evolving education with that is exciting. That's what keeps me up at night, but also being able to just see what the future can entail, because I know that our students and our staff are going to be able to accomplish some incredible things. But I think that's really where we're headed. When we take a look at today's workforce, and even just coming off of COVID, there's more individuals that want autonomy, they want choice, they want on-demand options. The term is a gig economy almost.
Flexibility.
So how do we make sure that both education as from the lens of an employer, but also the lens from a student is able to provide those?
Wonderful, wonderful. So we're going to take another short break here. When we come back, we'll talk about some of the challenges that Dr. Gandhi faced in his line of work. But before we go to break, I want to ask the Professional Lunch audience, if you have not followed our pages, our social media pages, please do so, because we are bringing some wonderful guests on the show every week. Another big news we have this year, we will be part of Giving Hearts Day, and so we need your help. We need you to help us get our matching funds going here so that we can be part of that. So more to come on it, and I know there's going to be an event on November 30th where we will have a great speaker. Mark DeSalle will be speaking about how nice is Fargo, so I'm excited about that. We'll be right back. We are back. We are at the Bison Information Network studio at ADSU today. My guest is Dr. Rupak Gandhi, the Superintendent of Fargo Public School. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Now we get to talk about the challenges that you face in your line of work. As you know, all professionals face challenges regardless of what they do. So tell me, what are some of the biggest challenges you face in your line of work right now?
Yeah, I think, right now I would say the biggest challenge is uncertainty. Uncertainty in terms of resources and also uncertainty in terms of expectations. As I alluded to a little bit earlier, school districts, the role of a teacher and the role of an educator continues to expand, which I think is great, but oftentimes the resources that are available aren't always there. As a public school district, I fully believe that there's room for additional compensation and benefits for educators across all public schools in the United States, just because the way the funding formula works is sometimes still a bit dependent on other things that are not in their control. So, we're not a for revenue business. We are a service industry that is here to provide an education. And when we start to recognize that the needs of no two learners are the same, we are really trying to figure out how to use one model that's used to standardize what's available for 11,300 students that we serve, knowing that all of them have varying needs. And it's always a dichotomy of uniformity that you need as a system, but understanding that each of your clients that you're responsible to providing a high quality education for might have differing needs. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges currently. I've talked about this a little bit before. I think mental and behavioral health continues to be a big challenge. Coming off of COVID, just the staffing across every industry. Oftentimes we think of schools as the supplier for workforce and being able to help workforce in many, many industries, but we sometimes forget that in most school districts or in most communities, school districts are some of the largest employers, and they're struggling with workforce right now too, whether it's teachers, support staff, bus drivers, or anywhere else. So I think those are all just some of the challenges that come to mind right now.
Yeah, you anticipate one of my questions here about the shortage of teachers. Are you dealing with that right now?
Yeah, we all are.
Okay.
There's been a shortage of teachers for a long time, especially in some very concentrated areas, whether it's special education or some other more specialized courses as well. But since COVID, now we're seeing a higher number across even many general positions that in the past there just wasn't that shortage to. And I think from all of the research at this point in time is that there is a significant shortage in terms of the future pipelines as well. So it's something that we need to take a look at. And that doesn't just mean solving the pipeline issues, but that also means taking a look at disruptions to the industry. How can we staff differently? How can we meet the needs of students differently as well? And then changing our expectations around what the role of a teacher is and what it's able to provide to make sure that we can elevate that profession for what it really is as well.
So if I'm understanding that correctly, teachers now, they are not too many young professionals going into that line of work.
What we're seeing right now is a lower number than before.
Yeah. So, well, how does the school, how does the school prepare to deal with that? Because, as you go, there will be issues that stop people from going into that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's so much to this and so many layers that we can unpack. I wish I could sit here and say we have all the answers, because if we did, we would have solved it, and we don't. But just like any other industry, we are working in our own grow your own programs and making sure that we're providing that opportunity. We're looking at, making sure that people can truly see what the rewarding experience is of being an educator and being able to provide that. I think at the end of the day, as a community, we need to elevate the profession as well. Sometimes when we look at education, we look at the public sector in general, we create these notions that may or may not be true. And yeah, there's going to be some students that pose challenges. There's going to be sometimes things that happen in schools because it's an opportunity for students to learn, and where else are you going to learn to recorrect your behavior if you don't have the space to do that? So sometimes the stories that get shared are the stories that create people more angst or uncertainty when it comes to what happens in schools and the role of a teacher versus the stories of joy, right? I tell people this all the time. In Fargo Public Schools, we have 11,400 students that that go home every single day. And we may hear a series of complaints or something that didn't go well, and that's okay. We're going to fix it. We're going to correct it. That's part of our job. We can't prevent every situation. But what we don't hear is, even if it's 100 every single day, which it's not, but we don't hear the other 11,300 students or parents calling and say, hey, I had a good day, or my day was exactly what I expected it to be. Human nature is not one to share your level of satisfaction, meeting your expectations on a day-to-day basis. So oftentimes the narrative that gets shared, whether it's through media or just personal conversations, is not really reflective of what's happening, which then also changes people's mindsets about that profession and then entering that industry down the road. So we just have to be cognizant about what we communicate and how we view educators and the impact it has on our society as well.
Now, you touch on a very good point here. And just last week, I was talking to Glenn Steven. He is the mental fitness guy. And one question I asked him was, why do people focus so much on the negative stuff instead of the positive? It takes very little effort to spread bad news, bad, negativity. But you have to move a mountain to really spread positivity and good things, satisfaction and happiness. Why is that? What do you think that is?
I think part of it's human nature, right?
Yeah.
We, most of us will spend some extra time on a highway if we see a car that's unfortunately in a ditch or in an accident or something of that nature, because whether it's personal. This is just my, I would defer to a sociologist or someone else to assess that better than mine. But my own personal opinion is, sometimes whether it's our own insecurities, where seeing something bad or being able to relate to something bad and saying, well, at least it's not that bad for me, might be a sense of a comfort, or it's just what's normal doesn't become news, right? What's abnormal becomes news, and that's part of the reason. COVID's a great example as it relates to schools. Coming after COVID, there was a lot of conversations around test scores falling, which absolutely they did, right? There's periods of time where students didn't get the instruction that they deserve. So if you test them on information they missed, they're going to fall. But what we never talked about is what our students showed during that time across the nation. We have school districts that provided internet and technology in rural communities that were never done before. We have students that are far more proficient now on devices and what they're able to do. They learned resiliency, they learned grit. And 15 years from now, 20 years from now, when you look back at your COVID years, I don't think an employer is going to say, oh, were you a first grader during COVID, or were you a senior that year, and I'm not going to hire you when someone else will, because human nature is to fill your gaps and become a well-rounded person and to learn in the areas that you haven't, knowing that no two people are the same. And we didn't focus on that, but we just focus on the negative. So I think some of it's the narrative that we create, some of it might be our personal desires. And then unfortunately, when something becomes politicized, you're almost always creating a two-position view on that, at least within our community currently.
So earlier, let's circle back to when you were talking about the budget model. Do you know the financial condition of this district, and how would you describe it?
Well, Fargo Public Schools, we are in a very good position in terms of being fiduciaries of taxpayer dollars. One of our sub-goals in our strategic plan is to make sure that we always strive to maintain a AA rating by Moody's, which is based on our cash flow position, our practices, to make sure that we have internal controls, but then also our debt to bond ratio, and that's something that we've consistently done. But in general, we are at the mercy of state, local, and federal revenue. And so our cycle works on the same as a state legislative cycle, where we receive a per pupil allocation. The biggest challenge for school districts across the nation, every school district, is around special education. Special education, when it was started by the federal government in around 1975, there was a promise that they would pay up to the 40% of the cost of students with disabilities to provide the services that they need, which might be more specialized, more intensive. And since then, the highest the state's ever gotten, I believe, is like around 17 or 18%, and we're down to, I believe, below 10 right now. So
why do you think that is?
It was just never fully funded by Congress because it's such a big cost. So almost every school district in America right now, I know, spends a significant portion of their general fund dollars for special education to cover that federal gap, and it's something that we advocate for as well. So that's one piece. Another piece to know when it comes to school district funding is almost all school districts will spend the majority of their funds on personnel. So 70 to 80% of almost every school district, I know in Fargo we're just north of 80%, is all on staff compensation and benefits. So really our resources are invested in the people that are working directly with children, and then making sure that gets translated back.
Is this school fully funded?
What do you mean by
Is the district fully funded right now? Is that something that you can answer?
Yeah, the district is funded through state, federal, and local revenue.
It's fully funded for the year or the 5-year?
Yeah,
or,
so
okay.
we have to certify a budget with our county, so the community has an opportunity to come out. Normally it's by the end of September, and then we have a fully certified budget based on what we're trying to do. Yep.
Wonderful. So, again, I always find myself repeating this when I have a guest on the show. The show is about young professionals, early career professionals, high school students, college students, and people who are launching their careers. So what would you say is the biggest struggle that students face at the school right now? And how is the school is trying to help them?
That's a great question. I think that you'll get a different response from different students. Okay. And I try to visit often with students. I have my own superintendent student group that I visit with often and try to get different opinions as well. One of the things that I'm seeing currently a need for that we have not been able to fully provide yet, we do provide in pockets throughout our school district, is more choice and voice. So the nature of schools are very structured because you might have 30 students in a class that are following 8 periods a day for 44 periods and following that schedule. Students often feel like I want complete choice and voice in what I'm doing, how I'm controlling my time, and so forth. But it's really, really hard to provide that level of individuality and flexibility when you have to provide a structured environment for students to receive their information at one point in time too. So that's a fun dynamic that we're kind of dealing with. I think our students have a lot of different pressures as well, like I've shared before about competing priorities. I think students often sometimes feel like there's 18 different measures of success for them as well. So, they might have parents' expectations that might be different than their teachers' expectations, that might be different than their own personal desires. And our job is really to make sure that we can find a way to be aligned for them and really empower the student to fulfill their passion as long as they're a productive member of our society and someone that's able to contribute back to our economy, right?
DEI, what is your definition of DEI?
So DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, the phrase that we use and the definitions that we used in our school district when we had our equity and inclusion department was we define diversity as count the people. So if I'm in the room, there's one Indian person here, there's one black person here, that's counting the people. We defined equity as measuring whether or not everyone has the same outcomes, so the parity or disparity. So if you know the diversity that you have, whether it's based on race, religion, or whatever the case is, if that's diversity, equity is measuring whether or not they're all getting the same outcomes and opportunities, right? If they're not, then equity is your tool to measure your parity or disparity in outcomes. And inclusion we defined and define as making sure that you can count the people, but do the people know they count? So inclusion is making sure that you have...
You can count the people, but do the people know that they count?
That's how we do that. So,
okay, explain a little bit more about that. Have you had experiences in that sense?
Yeah, I think, we as a school district, we've shifted. We still are committed to all the work that we were doing around diversity, equity, and inclusion, but because of the politicization and just the false narratives around it, we realized that we were starting to spend some time defending the work versus doing the work. So we shifted our work and the title of our department that was equity and inclusion to educational justice, because we say educational justice is ensuring that every student has that same opportunity. So when in that framework, one of the words that we've started using is belonging, and we say belonging and inclusion are the same thing, but belonging is what you want to strive for. And we define belonging as making sure that every student and staff or whoever you are can be your true authentic self, and you can feel respected, supported, included, and accepted. Those are the four components. So we know that in life sometimes you can feel accepted and respected but not feel included and supported, or maybe you feel respected and accepted but you don't feel that you're supported, or any other variation of that. So we've really started saying that our goal is to make sure that everyone has a sense of belonging in our school district, and that means that no matter who their true authentic self is, that they feel they're accepted, supported, respected, and included in everything that we do.
Wonderful. So it's are all the schools, you mentioned there's 26 schools. Do they all have the initiative for a student?
Educational justice is our second strategic initiative. It's a major part of our mission. So what we did is we, as a school district, we adopted several philosophies of things that we want to ensure, and we know that the core mission of everything that we do is to strive for educational justice. So it's a part of every school district. It's part of our system, but then every school's plan in it as well. Yep.
Okay. So I don't know if there's, I don't know that on that, but when it comes to success that you mentioned, that every student have their own way of defining success, is there some kind of general definition that you might find when it comes to student of color or to student, local students, I would say. I would say. So do you find like there was a big difference, a big gap between the success, the outcome from student of color and also students from different groups?
Yeah, I think so. Currently, if you look across our board, and I think based on grade level, content area, you might see different gaps, and that's something that we always identify. We know that areas for growth for us where students that have been marginalized or haven't received educational justice at the same level from our system in the past, specifically have been students of color. Their graduation rates haven't historically been higher, but we've done a significant amount of work and shown some progress there. I think currently, right now, where a lot of our focus is, and in addition to maybe our Native American student population, is also taking a look at our students with disabilities. And I think both in the state, in our school district, and across the nation, we're seeing some very disparate outcomes for students with a disability when it comes to their academic achievement. So we really need to figure out a way how to disrupt that and ensure that we see more parity in those outcomes. So that's a big focus for where we are right now.
Wonderful, wonderful. As I mentioned before, the show is about giving young professionals a window into your career. So now we get to a point where we would like to, what advice that you have for early career professionals, college students who are launching their careers. What would you tell them about launching their careers?
I think most importantly for them is to really define what their values are and what their standards are for when they make decisions and communicate. I think often leaders get in trouble because we make decisions based off emotion, or we may make a decision that's misaligned to someone else. And so I'm a huge fan of a lot of leadership literature. I read a tremendous amount of leadership books, but Simon Sinek always says start with the why. And I think if you can define your why, then it tells you one of two things. It allows you to justify your position in terms of why you're trying to make a decision that you are, but then also if someone's in disagreement with you and whether they're an authority figure or individuals that you lead, and if they're not in agreement with you, then it allows you to say, well, is this aligned to my values or somewhere where I need to be too? So instead of maybe just trying to sometimes push our way through as leaders or a perspective or a vision that we have, I think it's more important that you lead with communicating where you are and what you're doing and why you're doing it, and then being reflective and saying, okay, is this something that I want to continue to push, yes or no? And that might help you in a lot of those precarious leadership situations.
Well, we'll get to the last few minutes of the show today. I'm really glad that you were able to join me and talk about the school and talk about DEI. We covered quite a few topics, quite a few things today. And one thing I know for sure, I will try to get back to you because you mentioned mentorship is one thing that I'm pretty big on, and that's what I want professional lunch to be about. Yeah. So we'll have to speak about that at some point. Dr. Gandhi, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's such a pleasure to have you, sir.
No problem. Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. Now, again, this is the part now I usually say my last line, but this time, because we're going to be part of Giving Hearts Day, I want to remind everyone that we need you to raise our match fund. And that event coming up on November 30th at the Dakota Medical Foundation, we'll have a great speaker. Our speaker is Mark DeSalle. He wrote the book, How Fargo of You, a very good book. So I suggest you go on Eventide and get your ticket for this event because we, Professional Lunch, need you. Now, this is the part that I tell you. It's up to you to make today a great day. Have a great day.